Hey there, it's Mackenzie, your host of Winning. We're looking for sponsors for the podcast. If you have a business that you would like to promote to thousands of people, send us an email at podcastwinning@gmail.com or send us a message on social media. I cannot wait to hear from you. Now on to the show.
Winning is your guide to making it in business. Join our award-winning host and entrepreneur, Mackenzie Kilshaw, and special guests in casual conversations that will educate and inspire you on your business journey. Winning will help you learn the hard lessons the easy way with guidance from celebrated entrepreneurs and business leaders. It's fun. It's informative. It's winning.
Hello, welcome to Winning. I am your host, Mackenzie Kilshaw, and today's guest is Bryan Clayton. Hi, Bryan.
Hey, Mackenzie. Great to be here. Thanks for having me on your show.
Yeah, thanks for being on. I'm really excited to have you. So just so you can get a little bit of info about Bryan, he is the CEO and co-founder of GreenPal. It's an online marketplace that connects homeowners with local lawn care professionals. GreenPal has been called the Uber for lawn care, which I love, by Entrepreneurial magazine, and has over 200,000 active users, which is amazing. Before GreenPal, Bryan founded Peachtree Inc., which is one of the largest landscaping companies in the state of Tennessee, growing it to over $10 million a year in annual revenue before it was acquired. So you've done some really great growth stuff, Bryan, and we're going to talk about that a lot today.
Awesome. Sounds great.
Yeah. So why don't you start? I know I said a little bit about you, but why don't you kind of give the people listening a little bit more information of who you are?
Yeah. So like you mentioned, I'm CEO of GreenPal, which is the app that is like, it's like Instacart or DoorDash or Uber, but for landscaping maintenance services. So if you live in the U.S. and you need to get a gardening service, a landscaping service, rather than calling all over Facebook or Craigslist or something like that, you just download GreenPal, pop your address in, and you can hire a reliable lawn mowing service with a few taps of a button on your smartphone. And
that's super cool.
Yeah. GreenPal is a 10-year overnight success. My two co-founders and I've been at this a little over a decade. But now we're over 300,000 people using the app to get lawn mowing service and still growing. We want to get to 1 million users. And it's been a heck of a journey getting the platform going, but I'm glad I did it. It's been one of the most enriching things I've ever done, transitioning from a blue collar entrepreneur to a tech entrepreneur. And because my first business was a landscaping company that I ran for 15 years, getting it to 8 figures in revenue and then selling it. I took some time off and then I started GreenPal and I love running a tech company. It's been a lot of fun.
That's super cool. I actually also work for a tech company. So I feel that like it's such a transition from having a physical company or like a brick and mortar to going to tech. It's such a different world and you don't realize it until you're in it.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of the things that caught me off guard when I started my GreenPal was whenever you're starting a tech company, you think the hard thing is going to be the technology, the coding, the design, all these things. And yeah, those things are hard. But what's actually caught me off guard is that you're inventing a new product from scratch that doesn't exist.
Yes.
And that's the hard thing. You're bringing something new into the world that nobody knows about, nobody knows to use. They don't even know it can solve their problem. And you have to figure out a way to get people to use this new invention that you have invented. And that's the hard part. That's what took us a while to figure out.
Yeah. And the thing too with tech is you really, when you first start, you build what you think that people are going to like and how you think you would use it. And then as your clients come on and your product evolves, then you kind of go into product led, right? Where it's like, how do they actually want to use it? It might be different than what you thought.
Exactly. You come to the starting block with all of these assumptions. At least I did. I had ran a landscaping business for 15 years. I thought I knew everything there was to know about what consumers wanted and what pros needed and a lot of things that I assumed were actually wrong. And it wasn't until we started getting our first handful of customers. We ended our first year with just 20 customers, but we almost like lived with them while they were using the product. We sat down with them at their kitchen tables and talked to them about it and watched them use it, interact with it. And it was only by going through that we understand what we actually needed to build, what they wanted the app to do, what they were disappointed by, what they wish it would do, and so on both sides of the transaction. And the only way to do that was just to get a few people using it for a while. There's Mike Tyson's quote, everybody has a plan till they get punched in the nose.
Yep.
Building a new tech company is just like that. No business plan survives first touch with the customer, and that's how it was for us.
For sure. And I think too, not even just tech, I think that's business in general, because when you first start out, you're really making a lot of assumptions. And until you're able to validate those assumptions or say, oh, wait, we were wrong, right? You're just going in that direction until you figure out that it's right or wrong, right? You have to start somewhere. Yeah.
One of my favorite quotes is Paul Graham, who's the guy behind Y Combinator, which is an accelerator that is behind Airbnb and Stripe and a bunch of other big names. He says that when you're starting a company, you need to have the mantra, action produces information. And really, just if you're always focused on just that simple mantra that okay, we're just going to try something and we're going to get information, and then we're going to see if it worked or not, and then we're going to adjust, and then we're going to do it again over and over and over again. And a lot of times we get paralyzed by analysis paralysis, and we want to make sure we have this plan in place before we do something. And in reality, it's just an experiment. Everything you're doing is just an experiment. And so that action produces information. It really lowers the bar for what the outcome you're looking for is. I just want to figure out if, what's working, what's not, and just do that over and over again. That's how you get the kind of the first base or the second level of building a product from scratch.
Yeah, for sure. That's so true. So how did you go from having a landscaping company to building the app? How was it? Like, what was that transition?
It was quite a evolution, I guess you could say, almost a rebirth. So ran the landscaping company for 15 years and got it over 150 people, and then it was acquired by a national company in the space. You wouldn't think that there's landscaping businesses with thousands of employees that are nationwide, but there are. There's like a handful, and one of them bought the company. And so after I did that, I thought I knew everything there was to know about starting a business and growing and scaling a small business. And so I thought, well, I don't really want to do another landscaping business again, or another service business, or another like construction business. I want to do a tech company because I think that would be fun. And, it would be just like the social network. We'll build it, and we'll just like have millions of users, overnight. And the dream. And it was kind of naivete as an asset. I didn't really know what I didn't know. I didn't really understand how challenging it was to invent something brand new and bring it into the marketplace. And so, like I mentioned earlier, that was one of the things that really, really was challenging, that caught me off guard. And the other thing was even though it was my second company, it really was kind of like my first company all over again, because it was so different. It was like managing developers and engineers and content creators and designers and data scientists and so on is very different than managing laborers, mechanics, salespeople, and things of that sort, which is how my former life was. So I kind of had to just take it one step at a time and figure out what I sucked the most at that given moment, and try to work on myself and acquire the skills and I had to teach myself how to code, and had to teach myself how to write software, and had to teach myself how to build a platform like this, and that took about 3 years. But it was one of the most, looking back, I'm glad I did it. It was one of the most enriching things I've ever done in the last 22 years of business.
Yeah. And I think too, by learning some of those skills that you didn't have before, and I'm assuming maybe now you don't code as much, you probably have developers and a team, but you understand what it takes to do that job, right? So even knowing the basics of that, you understand. So you're able to know, where can we go with our product? Because you get what it takes to get into that, right?
And you know what a good developer looks like and what a bad developer looks like, and because you have the 80-20 acumen yourself. And this really applies to everything. In the last 22 years in business, for me, every single time I've ever tried to delegate or hire out something, that I don't know how to do myself, it's always blowing up in my face. It's always ended up in a disaster and a waste of time and money and everybody pissed off. And so for me, I have to learn just enough to be dangerous. It doesn't matter if it's copywriting or design or data science or product development or coding. I got to get in there and roll up my sleeves and do a little bit of myself. So then I know what success looks like and what it doesn't. And then I can make better hires and get better fits on the team, because now at least I know what success looks like and what it doesn't. And I tried to do it the wrong way first. That's the first thing we did when we built GreenPal. My two co-founders and I pulled some money together and we paid a development shop to build what we thought the first version should be. We did that, and that was a total failure. It was like a waste of 10 months and almost $200,000. And the only lesson we got out of it was we got a really good logo, and we got the painful lesson that we were going to have to learn how to become software developers if we were going to be in the tech business.
Yeah. Well, and you don't know what you don't know. Right? When you hire someone, the expectation is that they're going to be really good at what they do, and they're going to do the job, and hopefully they're going to do the job like you would do it. Exactly. But in reality, that's not often how it works out.
And I knew this before I made that big mistake, but everybody wants to believe, oh, it won't happen to me this time. And, one of my favorite books is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Dr. Stephen Covey. And one of the things he talks about in that book is delegation by way of stewardship, not delegation by way of abdication. And so delegation by abdication is, I don't know how to do this. You take care of it, you handle it, and let me know when it's done. That usually is a recipe for disaster. Delegation by stewardship is, here's the process on how we do this. Here's how we want it done. Here's how long we think it should take. Here's just what success looks like. This is the quality we expect. This is how much we think it should cost. And here's when we want it back by. You run this process. That's stewardship. It's like, you run this process that I'm making for you. And that is how you can succeed and get things done. And it, I had to do it wrong first before I figured out how to do it right.
Yeah. And the thing is, you don't know that it's wrong at the time. You learn that afterwards right? Any of us in business that have done any type of anything, started our own company, worked for someone, whatever it is, you don't learn the lesson until the lesson is over.
Yeah.
Right? You don't go into it thinking this is going to fail. You go into it thinking this is going to be fantastic. And then you realize, oh crap, this isn't great. Something's wrong.
And it's okay to make those mistakes, but it's not okay to repeat them.
Yep.
And that's the only way you learn and get better and become a better founder and build a better product and make more customers happy is to screw it up and do it wrong, or hopefully maybe learn from other founders' mistakes. That's why I like doing podcast interviews, so people can learn from my mistakes. But when you make that mistake, identify it, but don't make it again. You're going to make some more mistakes. Don't worry. And I think it was Bill Gates that said that success is a lousy teacher. And that's kind of how when I sold my first company, even though that journey was filled with success and failures, after I sold it, I felt like it was a success, and I felt like that I knew everything there was to know, and that's what teed me up for the colossal failure of wasting a year and $200,000 building a mobile app that nobody wanted to use.
Yeah. Because the thing is, if you, in your life, your business journey, whatever it is, when things go right, you don't ever have to learn anything new. You don't have to, overcome adversity. Things just go right. You can continue on. But as soon as something goes wrong, that's when you learn the lesson. That's when you learn, I need to learn how to code. I need to learn a little bit of marketing. I need to learn a little bit about finance, accounting, whatever it is. Yep. And that's when you grow, and then your business grows.
It's a fundamental, I think, law of the universe that applies to pretty much everything. And it sucks, but it's just part of it. You have to, the quote, scarcity is the mother of invention. definitely applied to us with building GreenPal. We had to learn how to do these things. We had to learn how to write code. We had to learn how to do things like SEO. We had to learn how to do things ourselves because we were forced to. If we had raised a bunch of venture capital or maybe we had an easy go of it or something, we wouldn't have been able to build something as good as we have today. So it all traces back to things that didn't work, that we then figured out how to make it better and fix it and do that over and over and over again.
A huge thank you to our sponsor, Just For You Day Spa and Wellness. Just For You is Canada's premier day spa with 5 locations in Alberta and Saskatchewan. The award-winning luxury spa features Leah Reese cosmetics and iconic Betty jewelry that you can also purchase online. Visit www.justforyoudaySpa.com to book your service or to purchase a gift card. Yep. And most success really is rolling up your sleeves and getting right in there. Whatever it is, right? That's when you find the success.
Yeah, I agree. I read somewhere the other day that intensity is the strategy. And so you mentioned rolling up your sleeves, like intensely, vigorously working a plan is the strategy. It's like, you don't have to like pour over all of the minutia of what it is you're going to do and how different it is. Like, I think George Patton said that I would rather a half-baked plan executed today vigorously than like the perfect plan executed a year from now or something like that. And so I think that like that strategy and the competitive advantage can be the intensity. Like your friends and family should describe you as an animal. Like they're like that, Mackenzie is rabid to make this plan work, to make that business work. Like that's when you know you're on the right track, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And when people say, they probably say this to you too, like, how do you do all this stuff? Like, how do you have this business and that job and this podcast or whatever else? But to me, it's the more I do, the better I get at everything. And I want to do it. The podcast, this is my like passion project. I do it to help other people. Yeah. And it takes time, right? It takes time and money, but it's for the better good. And I learn so much from my guests, for my own self, right?
Yeah.
It's worth it.
That creates that momentum, and the momentum creates luck. And if you're not putting in the reps, if you're not going through the cycles, it's hard to have some luck. It's hard to create some momentum. So I one thing that I like to always remind myself of is when I'm trying to do something new, whether it be podcasting or whatever, is the law of 100, which means you got to do it 100 times. So it doesn't matter if like you're launching a blog or you're launching a YouTube channel, or maybe you want to be, big on TikTok or something. You don't know if it's going to work or not unless you cranked out 100 YouTube videos or 100 blog posts or 100 podcast interviews, etc. And I always have to remind myself of that, because a lot of times you want to figure it out if it's going to work or not very quickly. But I think it can behoove you to stick it out 100 times, and then you'll know, okay, this isn't working. It's time to throw in the towel. Or you learn some new thing while doing that you didn't know, some insight you didn't see when you started. That then it's like, aha, this is the way we want to do it, or this is the angle we want to take. You look at anybody you follow that you respect and like their stuff. You look at the first like 10 things they did. It always sucks. Like the first 10 or 20 always suck, but they stuck it out. They did 100, and then they figured out what their niche was, what the thing they were good at was.
Yeah, for sure. And it's anything. I mean, anything that you're doing, you're learning to play the guitar, you're learning to cook, you're learning to do anything. I mean, the first times you do it, you're not good. Right?
Exactly.
But it's that perseverance and that learning. And where we are today maybe isn't the exact same place where we are a year from now or 5 years from now, right? So even going back to where you say you can make a plan and take a long time making that plan and then try to stick to it. If things change in the meantime, that plan's useless.
Yeah, exactly. It's okay. It's okay to have a plan, but no, it's going to change. It's like you have strong beliefs, loosely held. And so the plan is laying out this vision you have, this final like goal, but the way you get there is going to meander. The way you get there, the path you get there is going to wander, and that's okay. And I love that quote: strong beliefs loosely held. And it's a strange dichotomy. But that's what business is a lot of dichotomies that you kind of have to reconcile and hold in your brain at the same time.
Yeah, for sure. And things change. I mean, 4 years ago, if you would have said to someone, there's going to be a world pandemic and you're going to have to restructure your entire business, people would have said, yeah, right. That's never going to happen. And it did, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Like you have to pivot.
But every 20 and 22 years of business for me, every weird big thing that happened like that or bad crisis I had to go through, 5 years later, I was always glad it happened because that was the thing that forced me to make change, to build a better company, to become a better founder. Whereas I was getting complacent, and that's why that thing occurred or something. But so, every crisis I've ever gone through, I'm always glad it happened 5 or 10 years later. I always have to remind myself of that. That's
so true. Because when things are going really great, you don't typically make changes. You don't, because things are going good. So why would you change something?
That's right. That's right.
But you don't realize things could be amazing if you did change something.
Even as I'm sitting here talking to you, I'm like, man, I hope there isn't some big Google algorithm change or something that's going to cut my traffic in half or something. Like, I don't want change. I don't want to invite this into my life and business. But when it does happen, we have to remind ourselves of that.
Yeah, for sure. That's so true. Okay, so you have the landscape business, you sell it. You decide to start the tech business. You said your first year you started with 20 users. Now you have 300,000 users. So how did you scale? How did you scale that to be so large, so many users?
We did a lot of things wrong. One of the things we did do right was that we knew there was no reason to try to scale anything until we could nail it in one little town, because we're a local marketplace. Every city is its own network. So if you live in Seattle, you don't care how many lawn care services there are in St. Louis on our platform, and vice versa. No. And so every single market, every town, and every suburb of every city is its own little network that we have to build from the ground up. And so we did one thing correctly, where we spent 3 years in Nashville, Tennessee, where we live, figuring out how to make this thing work at a small scale on a small stage. And it was a lot of hand-to-hand combat, talking to lawn service professionals and literally getting in their business with them and figuring out how to tailor the tool set for what they wanted. And the same thing on the homeowner side, because we really have 2 customers that we have to satisfy at the same time. And so that was challenging. It took a lot of trial and error. And so we knew there's no reason to scale this thing. Although, hey, it really sucks running this very tiny business and very humbly, failing on such a small scale. We got to figure that out. And so that was one thing we did. And then once we started moving into other cities, we developed a playbook that we were able to it took us 6 months to launch our second city, Atlanta, Georgia, and then another 6 months to launch our third. And then as time went on, we figured out what worked, what didn't. And then we made a repeatable recipe that we could then launch a new city every week. And that's when we started to scale. That's when we started to pick up new customers in different cities and towns throughout the United States and bolt on revenue and then use that revenue to reinvest to make the flywheel spin faster. A lot of times as a founder, you wear the hat of capital allocator. And even if you're only making $1,000 a month, you got to figure out where you're going to put that money back to work. And so that's what we did. We did that wrong and we did that right. We figured out how we made experiments and bets. Starting a startup is a lot like poker. It's not chess. A lot of people want to make analogies to chess, and it's not, because with chess, you see everything that's on the board. You can figure out what moves to make based off of all the information that's sitting there on the board. It's not like that. It's like poker. It's like, I don't know what the next set of cards are going to be, but I'm going to make a series of bets, and then I'm going to lean in and double down on the ones that are working. Very much that's how we experienced it. And we used what little money we were making to put back into the business to make the flywheel spin faster. And so it doesn't matter what you're doing, you got to look at what the flywheel is of the business. And for us, I think it's a Jim Collins thing. He came up with the flywheel effect 20 years ago in the book Good to Great, and it still applies to business today. It's what is going to make the business grow and prosper faster. And for us, we figured out that, if we get a certain number of vendors in a city, that meant that a certain number of customers would come on board. And then after a certain number of customers, we figured out, okay, we got to make the bidding happen quicker. And then we got to make the transactions occur more reliably. And once we do that, more consumers come on board. And then when more consumers come on board, more vendors. When more vendors come on board, prices go down. Prices go down, more consumers come on, and so on. It's just never-ending loop. And then so we broke that down into little chunks and figured out ways to make improvements throughout the cycle. And that's how over a decade, we were able to get from 20 customers to now 300,000 people using it. And now the next goal is 1 million. We want 1 million people using this platform to get this chore done.
Well, and I think you'll get there because you've had such tremendous growth. And I think having that process, and then you're always improving on it. Right?
Yeah, it's never done. My team and I have dedicated our lives to this thing for over a decade, and we are still working on the same problem. How do we make getting a lawn mowing service faster, cheaper, smoother, more reliable, more convenient? And then as a lawn mowing service, how do we make them more money quicker, easier, with less headache than they could otherwise? We're still that was the problem we were set out to solve 10 years ago, and we are still making that better and better today.
Yep, that's fantastic. What were the biggest challenges when you first started?
The first was, inventing something brand new that nobody knows about is a lot harder than I thought. Figuring out ways to solve the chicken and egg problem that occurs in every one of these marketplaces was challenging. So back then, it was 2013. There wasn't a whole lot of online marketplaces that you could borrow ideas from. You kind of had to make it up as you go. And there were a few. There was eBay. Airbnb was just getting going. Uber was rolling. But there weren't a whole lot of marketplaces you could fast follow their playbook. And so we had to figure out, okay, well, how do we get service providers onto the platform when there's no customers? And then how do we get customers when there's no service providers? And so, we did that just by brute force. We got the first 500 lawn care services that use GreenPal all had my cell phone number, and I would talk to them 7 days a week. I would coach them on how to run their lawn mowing business and how to grow and scale it, personally, as the glue to fill in all of the areas where the platform sucked at the time. And
Loyalty.
So that was a way. Yeah, that was exactly. Yeah. And so then they would bid when the opportunities came on in their email inbox. They would show up and mow the customer's yard when they were supposed to, even though the app was clunky and barely worked. That enabled us to focus on the demand side, the consumer side, and just enough to be able to kickstart a little bit of an atomic unit of a network and kickstart a flywheel so it would grow. And it didn't happen easily, but that was a challenge, and that was really hard. It took us 2 years, and we just set really small goals that were tied to actual success. Not okay, number of users signed up or number of page views or something like that. No, it still is number of transactions that occurred in a week. And that was a very good active metric for us to understand the health of the business and our success or our failure is that number growing? And that number is a good metric because we're in the business of making connections. We're in the business of introducing buyers and sellers. And if they're not transacting and if that number is not growing every week, then we're not doing something right. And, our first goal was just 100 transactions in a week. It took us over 2 years to get. But after that, our next goal was 1,000, and then 10,000, and then 100,000. And so that's how we did it. It just took a long time, a lot longer than I thought it would.
Yeah, I think most things take a lot longer than you think they would.
There are no overnight successes.
No. Anyone that says None. Anyone that says, you can see it now if you scroll through Instagram or Facebook, I did this in 20 days or whatever. I don't think so. I think maybe from the time you started actually tracking, it was 20 days, but it was months or years before that. In any business, tech, brick and mortar, whatever it is, there's so much behind the scenes that you're doing that people don't even see.
Yeah, exactly. And everything that looks like an overnight success, maybe from the outside in, usually is like, well, that founder built and sold some other company before this one, and they applied all the learnings into that one, or they tried and failed 3 times, and they had all of the scars that they learned from those journeys, and they applied it to the one that did work. Or the thing was a different name and it rebranded, and it didn't take 3 years. It actually took 10. I mean, very, very, very rarely does something just blow up overnight. Even like you look at the fastest growing product of all time, ChatGPT, and it got to 100 million users in 6 months. That thing is like decades in the making. Like it is stacked on. I mean, you look at the stakeholders in that thing. I mean, it is literally decades of things that have stacked on one another to get that quick growth, that seemingly overnight success. So I always have to remind myself of this. It never is like that. It always is 5, 10, 15 years.
Yeah. And this is why us as business people that have been in it for a long time tell our stories. So that the new people coming in aren't like, okay, well, in a year, I'm going to be making $1 million, because you might be, but probably not. Right.
Yeah. And manage your own expectation, because that's a lot of it. Managing your psychology, and I read somewhere that success is expectations minus results, and that's all success is. It's like what did you expect to happen, and what actually happened, and as if it's to the positive or negative. That's how you feel good or not. And so managing your own psychology as a founder is big to get through the first 5 years.
Oh, for sure. And success is relative. I mean, what I think is success might not be what you think is success, or someone else.
And vice versa.
It's based on your own. Exactly. What were your biggest successes when you first started?
For me, looking back, I remember in year 2, I was working, my co-founders and I, for a long time, it was just us. We didn't have any employees. So the 3 of us were doing everything. So we had to work 6 and 7 days a week. And I remember it was a Saturday or a Sunday. I was in the office, and something like 30 people signed up that day on the website, and I didn't know who any of them were. And that was a huge moment, because up until then, all the sales were hand-to-hand combat, literally manually taking orders and things like that. But when 20 or 30 people signed up and I didn't recognize any of the names, that to me indicated that we had something that we could possibly repeat and scale. Because if I just added a 0 to the end of it and then did that again and again and again, then I would have an actual business. So that was a very small thing that took 2 years to get to, but it indicated to me that we had something that was working. So that was a success. Figuring out how to. There wasn't like one move on the chessboard that like created this inflection moment for us. It was very much a series of things that like 5 and 10%, 1% wins that compounded over time. And so there wasn't like a lot of aha moments, but that was definitely one. And then when we started figuring out our SEO strategy and how we started to figure out how to rank for keywords all over the country, that path has not been easy, but that was a moment for us that we knew we could have a repeatable user acquisition kind of strategy. And up until then, it was passing out flyers. It was very much like traditional media, newspaper ads, things like that. So that was a success for us as well.
Yeah, when we first started out, when I started my first business, I had a clothing store, a brick and mortar clothing store, and you really at first rely on your own network. So your family, your friends, your friends' friends. That's who you reach out to. Hey, come to my store, or try my app. And then when it's strangers, as I would say, who, you're like, oh, okay, I actually have something. Because it's not someone that's coming just because they know me or that I helped them out. They're coming because they want to come. And
That's a big moment.
Is huge.
It's a big moment, and
huge.
it's a hard one to get over. And the problem is a lot of folks, a lot of founders are scared to do the friends and family thing, and you kind of have to. You have to start with the people in your small network, and then like little concentric circles, like it just grows out in circles from that little seed that you plant. And that's a big moment. It was for me too. And because up until then, the 20-something people using it, I knew every one of them. And it was embarrassing at times.
It's true though. And the thing too is, if you look now, your family and close friends typically 100% support you. But if you look now, it's not, for you, you're over 300,000, but totally, even when you were at 500, most of those people, you had no clue who they were.
That's right. Yeah.
It's people that genuinely like the service, right?
Right. Yeah. Obviously you get out of the first 50, 10, 20, 30, 50 customers, then you're starting to work with people who you don't know, but that's a great thing because it means you're onto something. People aren't just doing business with you because it's a favor. But the other thing is the feedback is much cleaner. The people aren't going to do business with you and not going to use your service or product unless it actually solves a problem in their life. And the marketplace is a relentless purveyor of feedback. It's always going to tell you everywhere your product stinks, everywhere your business needs to be improved, everything you as a founder need to work on. And you can either take that as a negative thing. I know at times I have, or you can reframe it and take it as free R&D. I don't have to conduct market research. No. I don't have to wonder what 5 things my team needs to be working on. I know, the customers are telling me everywhere that we're letting them down. And so that, even to this day, even though we've got 300,000 plus people using our product, I still do at least an hour a day of customer service, customer support, because I don't want there to be some gap that forms between my logic and the customer's logic. And that's what happens a lot of times. The founder is looking at a problem from one perspective, and the customer is looking at the problem that the service solves from the other perspective. And there's this weird gap that forms between founder logic and customer logic. The way I try to keep that closed is to always be talking to customers and always be doing at least an hour a day of customer support.
For sure. Because the thing is, when you're a tech company like you and you have an app, if customers don't like your app, they cancel or they just don't use it anymore. Or me that had a brick and mortar store, if customers don't like my service or they don't like the brands I'm carrying, they just don't come back.
Exactly.
Right? You have to talk to them.
And it's not happening to you as the founder; it's happening for you. That free R&D is gold, because especially in the early days, because that lets you know if you're building something that people want or not. A lot of new business owners will build something they'll build a product in search of a problem. And you need to be building a product that solves an already existing problem. You don't want to be building something that's looking for people that are looking for a solution. You want to build something solves a hair on fire problem. And if people aren't sticking around, it's because it's not solving a problem in their life. It's not making their life more convenient in some way.
Yeah, if it's not benefiting them, they're not going to use it.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah,
as
for
simple
sure.
as that sounds, we got to remind ourselves of it.
Oh, 100%. And no one can tell you that better than your clients.
Exactly.
Right? We have to talk to them, ask them questions, do surveys. If someone wants to cancel, why do you want to cancel? Right? Whatever it is. Hey, you haven't been in my store for a while. Why not? Right?
Yeah.
It's I don't like what you're carrying. Okay, maybe I got to look at carrying some different things, whatever it happens to be. You have to make those changes or pivots to make sure that you're successful.
Every time I've ever been stuck in 20-something years of business, I'll just pick up the phone and I'll call 5 or 10 or 20 customers. And that always unsticks my thinking. It always helps me clarify, okay, now, I kind of knew that, but hearing 5 people tell me in a row, I know we need to make that a priority. And that's it always helps me kind of get back on track.
Yeah. And that's validating your assumptions, right?
Exactly.
Because when it's coming from your actual client base, it's true.
That's right. That's the one simple truth in business is what customers are saying.
Oh yeah, you can think in your head all you want, but until you hear it from customers, then you know it's right.
Exactly.
100%. So, okay, you had this crazy growth. when you first started out, people are calling your personal cell phone. You're giving them probably way more value than but just get people using your product or coming to see you. So I'm just going to assume 300,000 people now don't have your cell phone number, but how do you maintain your service quality while you're growing?
Yeah, as time goes on, you have to hand crank these things. So a lot of the customer service was very much manual in the early days. So, okay, this service provider didn't show up on the day they're supposed to. Let's call them on the phone, figure out what's going on, or this pro didn't finish the backyard. Let's figure out what happened. Let's call them. And going through those reps of fixing these problems by hand informed how we might fix them at scale later on. And so now it's 90% from the data. We understand, okay, this pro is only showing up 28% of the time on the day they're supposed to. We should probably demote them on the platform and not show them as many new opportunities. This pro is showing up 93% of the time. They're one of the best performers in their zip code. We should probably show them more opportunities and get them more customers. So we reward the top performing providers and demote and expel the ones that don't take it seriously, that aren't doing a good job for their customers. And so that's how we handle quality now at scale, is figuring out what's working, what's not, and trying to prevent negative outcomes, trying to prevent, okay, we have this problem where lawn care services are always leaving the fence gate open. I don't know why they're doing that, but they're doing it, and then the homeowner lets their dogs out and the dog gets out. At scale, these things that only happen 1 in 100 times. Well, when you're doing thousands of current transactions every day, that actually happens 20 times an hour. And so then you have to figure out, okay, well, this is happening too much. What is the solution for it? What is the product solution for it? And then just going through that over and over and over again until you solve these problems. And that's how you keep quality maintained at a high level at scale. But in the early days, you got to do it by hand. And that's what we did.
Yeah. And I think it's okay. Something that we don't often think about or talk about, when you said you demote or expel people, it's okay to fire clients. It's okay to fire, right? Or to break up with, as we'll say. It's okay if you have a lawn care provider that's not doing what they're supposed to do, you got to break up with them. Because that's going to ruin your reputation, right?
Exactly. It's you have to remind yourself of that. You can't be all things to all people.
That's right.
You have to do a better job, although it's your fault as the founder for not managing expectations up front and not creating a process that sidelines them before they get into your business. Because a lot of times you can prevent these bad outcomes from happening. It's like, well, this customer's pissed off. Well, why are they upset? Well, it's probably because you didn't do a good job of managing expectations up the flow somewhere. We made that mistake a lot. And so that's one thing that we know we're not all things to all people, but we try to figure out how do we manage expectations and get somebody the help that they need somewhere else and not on our system because we can't solve their problem. And one of those might be, when we were first starting, people really wanted to just push the button on, within 1 hour of when they wanted a lawn mowing at any time. And it's like, that's not the way the world works. That's not the way the lawn care service works. And so we had to over time educate and pre-qualify and very, very, very subtly manage expectations on how this is going to work. And if you fit this criteria, you are our ideal customer. Let's go. If not, here's 5 other websites you can go try.
Yeah, I love that.
That took a lot of trial and error to figure out how we can figure out how to do business with people that are good fits and sideline the ones that aren't.
Yeah. And I think when you first start out, you think, I don't really care who my customers are. I just need customers. And that changes as you grow. That's
true. And that's the way it should be. The first, $100,000 in revenue should be anything you can get your hands on. That's the way it was for me in my first company and in my second. And then as time goes on, you can build the systems around the customers that are a good fit for your business and what segment of the market you're attacking.
Yeah, that's fantastic advice. And I think we forget about that down the line. Once you are running and once things are going good, then you have to make sure that you have the right clients.
Exactly.
Because that's going to be everything. Yeah.
Double down on the ideal customers and build systems that serve them even better and better and better. You're never going to build something that solves everybody's problems. It's seemingly some big companies do it where Uber has they've got rideshare, they've got Excel. You can get a scooter, you can get Black, you can get the cheap ride, and so on. They didn't start that way. They started with town cars, and it wasn't until they achieved mega scale that they didn't layer in those other solutions for different types of customer preferences. They did not start that way, and they were in town cars for a very long time. So just remind yourself of that. You have to figure out, what is my town car? What is my thing that I do better than anybody else? And let me just build a business around that first.
Yeah, that's great advice. Do you have a most important lesson that you can share that you've learned along the way?
Yeah, it was there's so many. The most important would be really trying to figure out, like, a lot of times as a founder, your life can get dominated by things that are urgent but not important. And just because something's urgent doesn't mean that it's important. And a lot of times it can be related to customers. Some customer has a problem and it's urgent in their life, and they're raising hell, and they're calling you and emailing you nasty stuff, and now you got to stop everything you're doing to deal with this person's urgent thing. And then guess what? You were supposed to do budgeting that day, and you're supposed to do a key check-in with a person, and that you do every Monday, or at least you're supposed to. You're supposed to talk to your accountant that afternoon. You didn't do any of that because you did this other thing that was urgent but not necessarily important. And so I always try to be mindful of how do I spend more time in the things that are important but not necessarily urgent. The budgeting call with my CPA is an important thing, but it doesn't have to be done at 3:00 on Monday. But if I really hold myself accountable to stay in that quadrant, then that's how you pick up real momentum. That's how you get out of that kind of paradigm of being self-employed and really build a business.
Yeah, that's great advice. And is there anything that you wish you had known sooner maybe?
Yeah, I think a lot of times you in business you get the wrong idea about why you're doing what you're doing, and what really matters and what doesn't. So I wish, one thing I did do wrong in the early days, and I wish somebody had smacked me over the head, was that when we were starting, we wanted to worry about what is the color scheme of the website, what is our culture going to be. Oh, and we need to get GreenPal trademarked because we don't want anybody to steal that from us. Let's pay a designer to design this cool looking mascot, like a logo, and we really want to make that look great. And we want, and you notice I didn't talk about talking to customers, and it's like, I wish somebody had smacked me over the head and said, hey, you need 100 customers, and all this other BS doesn't matter until you do that. And as new founders, we always want to do all of the things other than talking to customers, hustling up some customers. Let me do everything but that. And because it's not fun. It's not fun going door to door. It's not fun cold calling. It's not fun facing that rejection. And so we want to do everything but that, and then it makes us feel busy. And we want to post to Instagram the startup grind life and stuff because it makes us feel good, and so I would have skipped. I could have saved myself 2 or 3 years of wasted time if I just focused on one thing, customers, in the first 100 or 1,000 customers, and not worried about all the other stuff. Done that later, it would have saved me a lot of time.
Yeah, that's so true. Because your customers are all that matter. If you don't have any, guess what? You don't have a business.
Exactly.
So it doesn't matter anyways.
Exactly.
A nice logo doesn't make you money.
No. I mean, it's necessary at a certain point in the game, maybe year 4, 5, or 6, level 4, 5, or 6, but not in level 1 or year 1. Worry about that later.
Yeah. Oh, that's great advice. Bryan, where can people find you? I know people are going to want to learn more about you and too about the app for our US listeners. So where can they find you?
Find GreenPal in the App Store, Play Store, or greenpal.com. Anybody want to reach out to me, find me on Instagram, Bryan M. Clayton. Just drop me a DM there.
Love it. Thank you so much, Bryan, for being on. You were a great guest. And I know that especially people that are interested in tech, I know that this was really going to be great for them. So thank you so much. I appreciate it. And for everybody listening, we'll see you. Yeah, thanks. We'll see you on the next episode.
Thanks for listening to Winning. Be sure to subscribe to get all of our new episodes. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others. Post about it on social media and leave a rating and review wherever you listen to Winning. To catch all of the latest from us, you can follow Winning Podcast on Instagram at winning_podcast, Facebook at Winning Podcast, and on Twitter at Winning Pod. Winning was created and is produced by me, Mackenzie Kilshaw. Music created by Summer Furby. Editing by Seth Armstrong. Special thanks to Shauna Foster for voicing our opening. And of course, a huge thank you to this episode's guest. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you on the next episode.